All right, folks, Yishai Fleischer here. United States President Donald Trump is thinking big thoughts. He's thinking big thoughts about the future of Gaza. He's thinking big thoughts about the hostages. And he's thinking big thoughts about the biggest thought of them all, which is about God in our life and God in this world. Let's enter the mind of Donald Trump. Let's go on a little journey into his way of thinking and see what we think of it and see what impact it's going to have on our world. Here's Donald Trump talking about the future of Gaza from Air Force One. Let's take a look.
Can you confirm that you'll be meeting with MBS and CC of Egypt soon? Will that be at the White House?
Well, I'll be meeting with all of them numerous times, by the way, but I'll be meeting with all of them. And yeah, I think that it's a big mistake to allow people, the Palestinians or the people living in Gaza, to go back yet another time.
So he doesn't think that the Gazan people should go back to Gaza. He's going to a little bit modulate that. But the bottom line is he doesn't think that they should go again and start a war again, I'm guessing, because they shouldn't go back once again and kind of live a fruitless life after it's been destroyed and it's been fought over many times. So that's part one.
And we don't want Hamas going back. And think of it as
And we don't want Hamas to go back there and control Gaza again. We don't want terrorists on the border of Israel, terrorists suppressing Arab lives, teaching jihadism to young people, and attacking Israel.
A big real estate site, and the United States is going to own it and will slowly, very slowly, we're in no rush, develop it. We're going to bring stability to the Middle East.
So the United States is going to own it. This is the part that's a little bit tricky to understand from point of view of international law and also from a moral point of view. Like, how come, what is this? Are we in an era of colonialization of the West? But on the other hand, if Israel has been too weak to hold on to its ancestral homeland and to control it and to govern it as it should, then I'd rather see the United States and a Donald Trump try to develop that area. And I know that my own Supreme Court here in Israel would block us from trying to hold on to this land, and the whole world would be up in arms. What is Israel doing? And here comes a third party that says, I want to develop it. And he says clearly in a minute that he doesn't want to develop it alone, but with regional countries. So, again, I would rather see Israel control Gaza, govern it, and develop it as it should have done since the birth of the state of Israel. But it hasn't done so. And here's a new option to replace the jihadism.
To a totally war-torn part of the Middle East, a part of the Middle East that has caused tremendous problem, the Gaza Strip, and we'll own it. It's totally demolished right now. It's a demolition site. It'll be reclaimed. It'll be leveled out, fixed up. There won't be anybody there. Hamas won't be there. We'll be building through other of the very rich countries in the Middle East. They'll be building some beautiful sites for the people, for the Palestinians to live in. They'll be living in harmony and peace probably for the first time in hundreds of years.
Okay, so when I was a young man, and I lived at the time in New Jersey, I was born in Israel, but moved to New Jersey when I was a kid. I remember when we traveled to Manhattan, there would be these Trump buildings on the Hudson River. And, they were always beautiful and large and kind of like, grandiose, and everybody wanted to live in them. And the idea that Gaza would become a kind of Riviera, a kind of Hong Kong in this region, it appeals to me. It appeals to me. I want to see it shiny. I want to see it successful. Do I want to see investment by Arab countries in Gaza? Yeah, I don't mind. Do I want to see American control of Gaza? It's not my favorite language. It's not my favorite idea. I'd rather see Israel control our ancestral homeland. But maybe it's like Hong Kong. Maybe it becomes American for a while, and then it gets passed back to the natural owners after it's been developed, and that is Israel. So, that's a deep thought. And of course, there are so many people around the world that are shocked by this thought. And yet the creativity of it, the innovation of it, and the idea that this place could be shiny and beautiful and successful, there's something to that. And I think there's something to that. It rings true in the ears of the Saudis, of the Emiratis, Now, they may not like the idea that Palestine, so-called, the idea of it is ending in Gaza. They don't like that at all. But President Trump has got his power, his economic levers that he is pushing on, and he's certainly putting a new idea out there. Okay, so that's the Gaza idea. What about the hostages? The hostages, which is such a big topic here in Israel, and Israel has made it a big topic around the world. You know, for me, I would have loved to see Israel try to rescue those hostages using our special forces units. I would have liked to see Israel turn off the electricity and turn off the fuel supplies and the food supplies. And I would have liked to see Israel choke out those terrorists. And I would have liked to see those hostages liberated by our forces instead of negotiations with terrorists and the release of many more terrorists. That is really not a deal, but an extortion, has been written about. It's heartbreaking for me to see Israel in a weak position. But in any case, that's the way it is right now. And here's President Trump on the issue of the hostages and the visuals that he's seen in the last few days and weeks.
This has been a disaster. And by the way, I have to tell you that I watched the hostages come back today, and they look like Holocaust survivors. They were in horrible condition. They were emaciated. It looked like many years ago, the Holocaust survivors. And I don't know how much longer we can take that when I watch that. I know we have a deal where we're supposed to they dribble in and keep dribbling in, but they are in really bad shape. They have been treated brutally, horribly. Even the ones that came out earlier, they were in a little bit better shape, but mentally they were treated so badly. Who could take that? At some point, we're going to lose our patience. When I see that scene that I saw today with people coming out of helicopters and airplanes that are emaciated, that look like they haven't had a meal in a month, no reason for that. And I don't know how much longer we can take it.
Do you mean you want to recast?
I don't know how long we can take it. When I watch people that were healthy people a reasonably short number of years ago, and you look at them today, they look like they've aged 25 years. They literally look like the old pictures of Holocaust survivors. The same thing. I mean, the same thing. And I don't know how long we're going to take that.
You can hear the disgust in his voice. I'm not sure I've ever heard him speak like this. I'm not sure I've ever seen that tenor in his voice of just disgust and revulsion at the horrific conditions that Hamas has held these hostages in. Of course, the hostages that have come out are in much better shape than those who have been murdered. The 1,200 people that were murdered on the very day of October the 7th, the many hostages that have been murdered throughout this past 15 months. And again, to me, it's like we should have never made this deal. And I think that President Trump is starting to see that this deal was not so pretty, how they're being paraded around and this kind of pageant show of the terrorists and the horrific conditions that they've been held in, those that survived. Not to mention those that have been murdered, massacred, raped, and who knows what else. Starved to death, thirsty to death, dehydrated. It's horrific. It's really horrific. And I think that President Trump is starting to understand that. And he's starting to understand maybe that there's no deal with these people. You don't give them their murderers and get back our hostages. That's not a deal. That's extortion. That's really negotiating with terrorists and giving them what they want. As I've said before, this deal is exactly the script that Hamas has wanted the whole time. They, from the get-go, used the hostages as their main card. And to say we will do anything to get the hostages back is to say, let's play in terms of the Hamas script. Let's march to their orders. And all the people that say to me, well, what if you were a parent? For God's sakes, I am a parent, and I don't want my kids to become hostages because this process is teaching the terrorists how valuable it is to take hostages, how worth their time it is. And I'm thankful for the disgust that I saw on President Trump's face. And I hope what that means for Prime Minister Netanyahu is that the time to restart the war until we annihilate Hamas is in the offing in the short term. All right. We're delving into the mind of Donald Trump. We talked about Gaza. We talked about the hostages. But this one, to me, in many ways, is the most important one. And it is about God himself. There's a very intimate moment that President Trump shared about his feelings about God, which I think we should all see and contemplate, see if it could enter into our hearts and into our lives. Let's take a look.
Exactly when our time on earth will be over. You never know. A truth I confronted a few short months ago when there was an incident that it was not fun. It was not a good thing. But God was watching me. The chances of me being here, my sons are shooters. They're really good shooters, Don and Eric. And they said the chances of missing from that range with that gun are, but Don equated it to a 1-foot putt. It changed something in me. I feel even stronger. I believed in God, but I feel much more strongly about it. Something happened. Faith in God has always been the ultimate source of the strength that beats in the hearts of our nation. We have to bring religion back. We have to bring it back much stronger. It's one of the biggest problems that we've had over the last fairly long period of time.
In this clip, I think we saw a very honest Donald Trump talking about personal faith and then national faith as well, bringing back faith into our discourse. Frankly, I was jealous when I saw this clip. I wish that our prime minister and our ministers in general would speak like this. How much God is important in our national discourse, how much faith gives us strength and a pathway forward, how it's truthful because God created the world. And certainly when it comes to Israel, which is the apple of God's eye, which is a battleground for God in this world and for his capital, Jerusalem, the spiritual capital of the world, I sure would like to hear that kind of talk from our leaders. And when it comes to God and religion, bringing back religion, I personally think that, there's Islam, there's Christianity, but I do think that Judaism has a way forward for the nations. And the Jewish way for the nations is called the Abrahamic faith. It's a way forward through classical Judaism for a way for people to worship. Now, we used to call it the Noahide laws. But I would like to offer to you that in the near future, there's going to be a pathway forward for Gentiles that is connecting through Jerusalem, through Jewish Jerusalem, through a temple in Jerusalem, through consciousness of Torah and Jerusalem. And I think that it's time for Israel to unveil that. It's time for Israel to release that into the world and to send out that consciousness. Of course, before Israel can send out the consciousness of the Abrahamic faith, Judaism for the Gentiles, it's got to believe in it itself. Israel's got to go through a process of coming closer to God and understanding Jerusalem for what it is, which is the revelation of God in this world in our time. And Jewish people who are very used to the concept that Judaism and Israel are not proselytizing. Well, that's true when we're not in our land. But when we are in our land, we have to act like Abraham, who really set out a way forward called the House of Abraham, which was monotheism for the Gentiles. That monotheism needs fellowship. It needs a calendar. It needs holidays. It needs prayer times together. It needs a ritual. And that is what Israel has got to issue forth. So many people, millions of people, it's on the tip of their tongue. They understand it. Sometimes they call it Hebrew roots and all kinds of stuff, but it's time for authentic Hebrew roots. It's time for the Old Testament, so-called, the real Testament, the original Testament, to come to light, and the Abrahamic way to push forward and enter into the hearts of Muslims and Christians and give them an authentic and honest and Israel-based path forward. In any case, if you agree to that or not, I think that President President Trump's vision that religion and faith come back into our international and national discourse is a blessing. And I want to wish him success in implementing that just as much as the returning of the hostages and just as much as the liberation and beautification of Gaza. So too, it's time to liberate our hearts from overt materialism and entertainment that is meaningless and a life that is not meaningful. We have to liberate ourselves from that. And let's hear that call of President Trump for a global consciousness of a return to God. God bless you, President Trump, and God bless this world to hear the call of God, who maybe is speaking through this man for a greater godly consciousness. All right, folks, thanks so much for joining me. You could always write me an email, yishai@yishaifleischer.com, and you could also keep up the fight for a greater, stronger, bigger land of Israel at fightforisrael.org. Join me there and all the projects that we have to beautify and strengthen the land of Israel, to send Torah and the Abrahamic faith throughout the world. Finally, a great way to support the show is buymeacoffee.com/Yishai. I am sending you blessings from the land of blessings, from beautiful Judea. May God be with you. May you be strong. Continue to broadcast and rebroadcast the message of God. God bless you wherever you are. Lots of love and lots of blessings, and shalom.